Flying on an airplane can be an extremely stressful experience for some people. Just recently there was a woman who tried to exit a plane mid-flight that had to be duct taped to her chair. Whatever the reason was for melting down though, there have been a ton of Karens that went so far they were actually booted off of the airplane. Not mid-flight, of course, but as soon as they landed. Coming in number 10, Frontier Karen.
I'm speaking to you. You have to wear your mask the whole entire flight. If you're unable to do so, you will be removed from the flight.
When COVID hit, there were a lot of people who still found a way to fly, and so as you can imagine, now flight attendants had to enforce wearing a mask while on board. Turns out that not everyone agreed with this though and still attempted to board the plane without wearing a mask. Although most of these people are going to get little sympathy from their fellow travelers, as this was very evident when it came down to Frontier Karen. In the clip you can see that a flight attendant tells this Karen that they need to wear their mask, and when they refuse, the attendant reminds the passenger that they agreed to this at the time of purchasing their ticket. Shortly after that clip began circulating, another one appeared that showed security escorting her off of the plane as passengers began clapping and shouting "Bye Karen." Coming number 9, Delta Karen.
What's your name? Tabitha 9766. Thank you, Tabitha. You may not have a job tomorrow.
A woman recently had to be kicked off of a plane to Syracuse after she complained about being seated too close to a mother and her baby. The 19-year-old mom from Rochester shared the video of the incident that shows this unruly passenger screaming at flight attendants and even threatening their jobs. The mom told the Daily Mail that this lady was the last person to get on the plane, and right away she was shouting and swearing that she even had to sit at the back of the plane. When people around her told the woman to stop swearing around children, she began to slowly descend into madness. The woman even continued to argue with the gate agent that came to remove her from the flight until she finally was told to gather her things and get off. The mom would later write in a post, "This lady thought that she was going to be rude to me and Mason. Now she has no way home today. Thank you to the lovely Delta flight attendant for not letting this woman bully us." Coming number 8, Southwest Karen.
Better to get off.
Why are we having a discussion? You're saying I didn't comply and put my mask on when you asked me to?
Although we don't get much context on this Karen, it appears that this also began over an argument about not wearing a mask while on the plane. The video starts with the woman arguing with the flight attendant before another passenger shouts that she better get off. The woman, who is now suddenly fully masked, refutes this and says, "I did put my mask on. You're saying I didn't comply and put my mask on when you asked me to. Are you seriously telling them that I didn't put my mask on when you asked me to?" And as the argument gets more attention from other passengers, the flight attendant moves toward the front of the plane and tells the woman to finally get off of the flight. The woman then stands up and aggressively begins grabbing all of her belongings as her boyfriend slowly follows behind her. I mean, that poor man. I hope he's single now. Coming number 7, screaming for attention.
Ma'am, I'm trying to...
This one is absolutely wild and goes to show you that some adults are simply just big babies. Sometimes during flights they do these things called through flights, which essentially just means that some passengers will deplane, but others can stay where they are until the new passengers boarding grab their seat. More often than not though, people will just get up and stretch their legs, but Karen just refused to move from her seat. A flight attendant approaches and asks her if she is going to get off because other people in her row were trying to leave, but the woman stays looking forward and still does not budge. Then as another passenger begins to get antsy, saying that she needed to use the bathroom, she tries to pass and gently brushes the shoulder of this woman frozen in her seat. At that moment, all hell breaks loose and this Karen just starts screaming. I mean, really screaming. She even tries to reach for the woman's arm as she passes by, although thankfully a flight attendant was right there and so she stepped in to put this Karen in her place. Coming number 6, racist Karen.
What's going on? Why are you kicking me off the plane? It's a white.
Yeah.
In another bizarre case of someone freaking out over being told to wear a mask, we have this lady who for whatever reason made some racist remarks as she was being asked to leave the plane. As we stare at a video of a plane full of people wearing a mask, the Karen begins shouting that no one on the plane was wearing one. She then asks if she's being kicked off of the plane because she's white, before turning back and yelling about how she doesn't like black people. It's very confusing. Coming number 5, JetBlue Karen.
Oh, because I called someone old. I got kicked off the f***ing plane. Bye! Enjoy yourself in Vegas, babies!
Back in the day before wearing masks became mandatory, the usual unruly passengers that we would see were more often than not people that maybe had a little bit too much to drink at the airport bar, or they didn't like sitting next to a crying baby. For this Karen on her way to Las Vegas, it was a little bit of both, and her trip was actually cut short after she got upset upon finding out that she was situated next to a child. According to the arrest report, she said, "I'm not sitting next to a 3-year-old, I've been drinking all day." She then proceeded to get up out of her seat and try to sit in a spot that was not hers, and as people began heckling the woman for doing this, the flight crew decided that they had enough, so she was asked to get off the plane. As she was being taken off though by a Broward Sheriff's deputy, the Karen did not go quietly. She began shouting expletives at the officer and other passengers, saying that she was being kicked off for just calling someone old. The worst part that wasn't included in the video was what happened afterwards. Again, according to the arrest report, she actually tried to get back on the plane, but when a gate agent blocked her path, the woman decided to hit her. Thankfully, she was shackled up, plopped into a wheelchair, and rolled out of the terminal into police custody. Coming number 4, Karens for Trump.
But this is what they do to us. They kick me off the plane. They call me a Karen, and they want to rule my.
Now, not all Karens are female. This general term used for an angry and entitled customer can equally apply to men. In this case, we had a clip of a dude who had a full-on toddler meltdown upon finding out that he had to wear a mask to board the plane. At least, that is the assumption from this video, although I do want to point out that he does say in this video, "They kicked me off of a flight, they called me an effing and they want to effing rule my life," which is more of an indication to me that this man had some sort of involvement with, I don't know, let's say the riots at the Capitol on January 6th. Because if you remember, a ton of Trump supporters found out upon either trying to flee DC or upon arriving at their home terminal that they had just landed themselves on the no-fly list. Plus, the clip ends with a woman in a red coat telling him to please calm down, adding that she too was kicked off of a Delta flight earlier. Not sure how that helps, but okay. Coming in number 3, Exorcist Karen. I don't know if this woman necessarily fits the Karen mold, but she certainly has lost her mind enough to warrant being on this list. While on a Michigan-bound plane, this woman had a meltdown that looks like it was straight out of the movie The Exorcist. The video shows her with a mask pulled down around her chin and mounting to armrests in the aisle of the plane as she repeatedly yells and bangs on the overhead luggage compartments. She doesn't really appear to have been directing this anger at anyone in particular, but nonetheless, she continues to climb on the seats and shout obscenities. Eventually, she is led off of the airplane by 2 men, but again, we have no idea what prompted this sudden outburst, and the airline refused to provide further details. Coming number 2, a ranting Karen.
Okay, and I've been
That's
waiting.
an issue. Listen, that's an issue between you and airlines. But at this point, the captain wants you off the plane.
This woman only became a Karen after the entire flight was asked to deplane due to her behavior. However, leading up to that, it appears that most of the other passengers were actually thoroughly entertained by this lady just ranting about how crappy the airline was, even chuckling when she said that this was all Trump's fault. At one point, she gets up out of her seat though to rant directly to the flight attendants, and I guess they were so triggered by all these Karens that security was called almost immediately. The woman comes back to her seat claiming that they were calling her disruptive, but upon being asked to leave, she starts blaming the staff for starting it all. Police then come on board and notify her that the captain wishes for her to get off of the plane, but they don't really have a reason other than this disruption, which really isn't that good of enough of a reason to warrant a removal. So instead, they just say that there's something wrong with the plane, order everybody to get off, and then boom, the police just meet her at the entrance. Pretty smart, pretty smart. Last but certainly not least, our number 1 spot, emergency meltdown.
Are you fucking kidding me? No, I don't know what hell is. I've been there 6 times. I've lived. Tell the story.
After another passenger on the plane fell ill, a Spirit Airlines flight was diverted from Minneapolis to Rochester. Although once that jet landed, this Karen absolutely lost her marbles. She immediately became distressed and started hurling a stream of expletives while demanding that the staff let her off of the plane. 2 male passengers attempted to calm her down, but to no avail. She then bizarrely says in a threatening tone, "Do you know who my brothers are? They're snipers. You want to mess with the Marines?" Which makes no sense at all, but she continues. She starts saying things like, "You want to know what hell is? I've been there 6 times." Thankfully, the police arrived and escorted her off of the jet, but in reality, she's probably going to need some sort of mental evaluation because even as the police were taking her off the plane, she continued to still be belligerent.
Starting us off at number 5, Mask Karen. There have been a lot of Karens who've been upset about the whole wear a mask thing. One of these infamous Karens had been arrested in Melbourne for not complying with the law stating that everyone must wear a mask and those who fail to do so will be hit with $200 fines. This Karen had been seen on 2 separate occasions fighting with employees of various department stores over her not wearing a mask. I'm gonna take a moment to say, wear a mask. Please. It's people like this who are the reason that Halloween is cancelled this year. Please just put a piece of cloth over your face. Anyway, this woman was approached by officers after a hostile situation started to get out of hand, and the woman kept saying that it was unlawful for them to ask her to wear a mask. No, it's not. This Karen really wouldn't take no for an answer, but they rarely do, so that's really not surprising. This Karen kept getting hostile with the officers and was even handcuffed. She was not happy with that and even claimed that her arrest was also unlawful and that the legislation was fraudulent, it didn't apply to her, and that it only applies to dead people. I'm not quite sure where that came from, Karen, but that's certainly not correct. The Karen was later released but came back to the station days later in order to request that her name be removed from the record, or she would press legal action against the police department. She is by far one of the most Karens out there. In at number 4, Staircase Karen. You may be familiar with the viral video of a racist Karen confronting a woman who was working out in a park. The two women bumped into each other on the staircase and chaos ensued. The Karen then hurled a slew of racist remarks at the woman, saying things like, get out of this country, get out of this state, get out of this world, and using some not so nice language. All of this because you bumped into each other on a freaking staircase? And apparently there was more than enough room on the stairs for her to not even come close to the other woman. Obviously this Karen has some deep-rooted issues. This woman acted like she was so entitled, like the stairs were the gateway to heaven or something. Like, lady, this is a park, a public place with other people. Karen urged the woman to put the footage of the incident online, and she said that everyone will beat the crap out of her for this. Again, why so aggressive? After the footage was posted online, city officials got a hold of it and began an investigation into the angry staircase Karen. Luckily, she was found by authorities and was charged with misdemeanor battery. At number 3, Burger Karen. This one's my favorite. The story of Burger Karen, that's what I'm calling her, comes from Reddit user DripGodRob. This Karen made quite the spectacle at a local burger joint. I'm guessing because she was hangry? The Reddit user goes on to tell the story about how during a lunch or dinner rush, a Karen got very upset about the burger she received. This burger place sells the Impossible Burger, which is plant-based, and when they wrap it they put a distinct sticker on it as to not get it confused with other meat-based meals. So Karen goes ahead and buys an Impossible Burger. Then a few minutes later comes back up to the cash screaming that her burger is wrong and that she demanded a new one. In NBA All-Star fashion, she chucks the burger into the trash and demands a new one, but the manager, upon checking her order, reveals that she actually got the right order and that she was mistaken. Now, the golden rule when it comes to dealing with Karens is to never tell them that they're wrong. That's what triggers their kill switch. This Karen got pissed and she started to come behind the counter and threaten the workers, as Karens do, until an employee decided to make her another burger just to shut her up. Meanwhile, the cops are on the way. When the officers finally show up, they try to get her to leave the restaurant, but she refuses. Instead, she decides to start beating up the officers, and this leads to her arrest. This lady must have been a real grumpy goober after not getting her burger, cause man, this was a spectacle. Coming in at number 2, Chipotle Karen. Coming out of Orion Township, Michigan, a Karen and her husband, what do you call a male Karen? A Ken? I don't know. A Karen and a Ken were arrested after pulling a gun on a mother and child outside of a Chipotle. 15-year-old Michaela Green told the story about how the Karen, whose real name is Julian Wustenberg, bumped into her as she was exiting the restaurant. Michaela said excuse you to the woman, and in natural Karen fashion she clapped back. She began cussing out the teenagers, saying things like, "You're invading my personal space." Soon Michaela's mother Tequila came over to protect her daughter, and that's when things got even more heated, when the mother called her a racist. Karens don't like being called racist. Miss Wustenberg clapped back by saying that she's not a racist and that no one is racist, and then she got into her car. As they started to reverse, Michaela's mother indicated to Michaela, who was filming the whole thing, that she thought that the Karen was going to hit them with her car. In an effort to stop the car from hitting her and her daughter, Tequila hit the back of Karen's car, prompting Karen and her husband to exit the vehicle with their guns drawn and pointed at the pair. Michaela and her mother were heard in the video to be calling for the police, and that's when the Karen and Ken drove away. The two were later caught by police and charged with assault. I guess Karen was just mad that day because she didn't want to pay extra for guac. And finally at number 1, Cough Karen. This next Karenism comes out of Jacksonville, Florida, because of course it's Florida. And I can say that because I'm from Florida. The Karen in this instance is named Deborah Hunter, and she had a meltdown in a Pier 1 Imports. In a video captured by a woman named Heather Sprague, we see this Karen character getting pretty heated with the store's employees because she was unable to return a damaged item. I used to work at Winners, which is very similar to Pier 1, and I've gotta say that with stores like this, you get a lot of Karens coming coming your way. I've had my fair share of Karens who think that it's their right to insult you when you can't refund them for their stained white blouse that they got on discount. Anyway, this Florida Karen was seen getting increasingly belligerent until she saw that she was being filmed. Karens don't like being filmed. They only like filming you. Karen went over to the woman filming her and said, "I think I'm going to get real close to you and cough on you." Mind you, this incident took place in the midst of the pandemic, so coughing on someone was considered a Also, the woman she coughed on just so happened to be a cancer patient who was in the middle of getting treatment for a brain tumor. Karen legit coughed on someone who was already immunocompromised. After this, Karen was arrested for assault, as she rightfully should have been. In a time like this, the fact that people are using their coughs as weapons against people is absolutely disgusting. Man, Karens are just too much.
You may have seen this viral video around. It was one of the most early examples of a viral Karen freakout video that took social media by storm. But what you didn't know is the person that this woman coughed on is actually a cancer patient. More specifically, at the time of this incident, she was undergoing treatment for a brain tumor. It's not a secret that the pandemic is keeping everyone on edge. I feel like I'm going around, I'm seeing couples fighting, dogs are eating each other, squirrels are scratching. But that also means that people are taking out their frustrations on store clerks and retail workers. Or maybe they're just being Karens. Karens being Karens. I'm about to tell you about an incident where the Karen dial is turned all the way up. On June 5th, 2020, during a dispute at a Pier 1 store in Jacksonville, Florida, an incident took place that was caught on camera that shows an angry woman who realized she was being filmed. The woman who was filming her was Heather Sprague. Here's what Heather Sprague wrote on Facebook about the encounter. "Yesterday I learned firsthand the power of conscientious bystanders. It took 30 seconds to end 15 minutes of aggressive harassment. I'm a mother of 10 and currently a brain tumor patient at Mayo Clinic. Obviously, I don't get out much right now. I had an appointment in the town center area, so I donned my mask and ducked into a store to escape the heat while I waited for my appointment time. There were two small children wandering around the store unattended for an extended period, and the little guy was doing the potty dance. It became apparent that they belonged to a woman at the register who was becoming increasingly belligerent. She was screaming at, insulting, swearing, and threatening the staff as she demanded to return an item she didn't have with her, just a photo of the item on her phone. The staff were professional and respectful, but they couldn't return an item she didn't actually have with her. She continued to rage all the while her poor little boy was squirming and asking for a bathroom, which she would have needed to leave the store to find. When she positioned herself so the clerks couldn't exit the checkout area and screamed that she would stay right there, yelling as loud as she wanted, until all the customers left, I stood at a distance, pulled out my phone, and wordlessly began filming. She immediately turned her attention away from the staff to me. The video tells the rest of the story. I did not speak, react, or engage, simply stood to document the behavior. When bullies are faced with accountability, they must acknowledge the unacceptability of their actions. Within 30 seconds of filming, her tirade was done and she left the poor staff in peace. And hopefully her sweet boy got to find a potty. I'm off to find a COVID test. Thanks, Karen. Cough cough. Okay, so let me get this straight. This Karen threw a freak out in a Pier 1 because they wouldn't let her return an item she didn't actually have with her? That's like next level. Like, what? I've seen Karens want to return items because, you know, like, they have the item with them, they don't have a receipt or something, or like, you know, it's past the 30 days or whatever, exchange whatever only. But I've never seen a Karen want to return something that she doesn't actually have. What did she expect would happen? It's too much. It's too much. I told you the Karen dial was turned all the way up. The video of the cough went super viral. It's been seen many millions of times, and the woman in the video was basically the face of Karen freakouts. It turns out though that this little cough was enough to get this Karen, or should I say Deborah, charged. Heather Sprague filled an incident report out with Pier 1 that day, and a few days later filed her police report. Jacksonville police confirmed that the woman in the video is named Deborah Hunter. She was arrested and charged with assault on July 22nd. Yes, coughing on someone could be considered assault in this pandemic, especially an assault on someone whose optimal health is of utmost importance. Sure, maybe Deborah didn't know that Heather was suffering from a brain tumor, but that's why you don't go coughing on people. According to Florida's definition of assault, an assault is an intentional, unlawful threat by word or act to do violence to the person of another, coupled with an apparent ability to do so, and doing some act which creates a well-founded fear in such other person that such violence is imminent. Sounds like assault to me. Thankfully, Heather Sprague was wearing a mask because she's immune compromised. She's going through chemotherapy and really can't be too careful. But it is highly likely that if she did get COVID from this encounter, it could have been life-threatening. Deborah Hunter is scheduled to appear in court on August 19th.
Yeah. You, people. You are people.
Have a good one.
A TikTok video that shows a woman duct taped to a chair while on an American Airlines flight has gone viral, and according to the people that were present for this flight, this lady apparently tried to exit the plane mid-flight. That being said, people are also criticizing the person that filmed the video for how they handled the situation. American Airlines flight attendants are facing a ton of criticisms for their very unusual method of taping an unruly customer to their seat mid-flight. According to reports, the passenger was having a mental breakdown while the plane was still in the air and had actually tried to open the door at the front of the plane during the flight, which must have been an absolutely terrifying scene to be had. In the video taken as passengers were getting off of the plane, you can actually hear the woman screaming, "You, you," and as the person recording passed the flight attendants, they just calmly nodded, saying their usual goodbyes. The American Airlines flight 1774 was 2 hours in total and was going from Dallas-Fort Worth to Charlotte, North Carolina. Although before takeoff, the flight had been delayed for at least 3 hours before finally departing at midnight. However, an hour into the trip, all hell broke loose. The TikToker that recorded the video described this very hectic scene. Apparently, flight attendants began turning on the lights at around 1:30 a.m. and according to the TikToker, she said that they were frantically running up and down the aisles while whispering to each other. The plane crew then proceeded to lock the bathrooms and began grabbing bags from the overhead bins, but would not tell other passengers what was happening. Finally, the pilot came over the intercom and notified them that a bad situation was happening on the plane right now, but asked the people remain in their seats. They then all gradually began to hear more and more screaming, which made people even more curious as to what was going on. Luckily, a flight attendant who sat near the TikToker that recorded this whole thing explained that a woman with an apparent mental issue had an outburst and then had the urge to get off of the plane. She kept repeating the words, "I need to get off this plane." The distressed woman then approached the emergency exit door and began banging on it while yelling that they needed to let her off. Remember, this is all happening while the plane is still in the air. And according to other passengers who were nearby, it took all 5 flight attendants to subdue this woman, who they literally had to take down to keep everyone else safe. For people at the back of the plane though, this mysterious problem that they were told was being handled probably worried a lot of people, because on top of that, even in the recording towards the end of this incident, you can still hear the woman shouting and screaming. Then as those passengers who couldn't really see the commotion went to get off of the plane, they finally got to walk by the cause of all of this drama. And as you probably saw in the video, the solution that the flight attendants came up with was taping this woman to her chair. American Airlines has also confirmed this incident and told the Washington Post that the woman had attacked and actually bit a flight attendant in addition to trying to escape mid-flight. In their official response though, a representative told TMZ, while in flight from Dallas-Fort Worth to Charlotte on July 6th, the crew on board American Airlines flight 1774 reported a potential security concern after a customer attempted to open the forward boarding door and physically assaulted, bit, and caused injury to a flight attendant. Adding, for the safety and security of other customers and our crew, the individual was restrained until the flight landed at CLT and could be met by law enforcement and emergency personnel. According to reports, the woman was then taken to a hospital for evaluation, and she has been put on American Airlines no-fly list until further notice. Thankfully, the flight landed successfully without any further incidents. Now, I did mention that the TikToker who recorded this also came under attack from people online. According to her, the flight attendants should have gone a better way with handling this situation, but most people actually sided with the flight attendant.